My name is Kevin Day. In 2004, I was on board the USS Princeton, stationed out of San Diego, California, and my rank at the time was a Senior Chief Petty Officer.
So, in the Navy, during that time, what was your job? What kind of role did you play there?
To put it simply, I was a radar man. Worked in Combat Information Center, or we call it CIC on the ships in the Navy. And my job was to man the radars and ID everything that flew in the skies. And I also sat a position called Anti-Air Warfare Coordinator, where if we ever had to go to war, I was the guy that was going to launch the missiles and kill shit. In addition to that, I was the Air Intercept Controller. When the Super Hornets take off the carrier, I'm the guy that takes control and takes them to the fight and gets them home safe.
So when people hear you talk and see you on camera, give us a little indication about the level of experience you had during that period of time in your career.
When the TicTac UFO encounter went down, I had a little over 18 years actual sea time on Aegis type ships. And the Aegis ship is our newest weapons system afloat. And it's got the Spy-1 radar system, phased array radar system, and I was an expert on that.
So take us back in time to that week in November 10th-ish, around there, when you first became aware of something was going on. Maybe describe that scenario.
Yeah, I was on watch. I was actually sitting Anti-Air Warfare Coordinator, AAWC is what we called it. And we were probably 100 miles, I forget how far exactly that day we were, off the coast of San Diego southwest, kind of off the coast of Mexico, Baja. And I started to notice these weird tracks that were popping onto my radar coverage right about on San Clemente Island. And the reason why I say they were weird, because they were appearing in groups of 5 to 10 at a time. And they were pretty closely spaced to each other. And they were 28,000 feet going 100 knots tracking south. And in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, that's kind of odd. I mean, I don't know anything that flies like that. They weren't on the comm air routes, the commercial airline routes. I wasn't really that concerned about them. I didn't consider them hostile for any reason at all. And I just we watched them for several days. And if we wouldn't have had an air defense exercise scheduled to happen on the 14th of November, maybe this whole thing never would have happened. We maybe weren't that concerned about them.
Why were you there with the ships out there at that time?
We had received orders to, the war was still going on in 2004, and we had received orders to deploy a little early, so we were out there doing what they call a Tailored Ships Availability Training Period, or a TISTA. And we had ourselves out there on the Princeton, and we had the Nimitz, and the Air Wing had just arrived on the Nimitz, so they were doing their pre-deployment training as well. And our big goal, as far as our ship was concerned, because we're an air defense commander, was to do an air defense exercise. So
you're planning this, getting ready, and you start seeing these tracks that are unusual. What is the protocol? I mean, what do you do when you start seeing that kind of unknown aircraft or unknown objects that seem to not be anything that you can identify? What do you do?
We Our goal when we're standing watching CIC is to identify everything that's in the sky, and we have certain protocols and procedures that we use. We go through a certain process to identify things, things including, without getting too classified about it or classified at all, we use a safety of or flight profile, excuse me. Exactly how they're flying. Are they on a comm air route? Are they not on a comm air route? Are they transmitting any type of identification, friend or foe, which is an ID system that most aircraft will have. And we also consider if they're heading towards us or not, or heading towards something that we're trying to protect. And we put it all together and come up with an ID.
And in this case, what happened with that system?
We failed utterly to identify these things. It didn't meet any of the parameters for anything that was known. In fact, I asked Captain Smith about it, the Air Defense Commander. He was stationed at Princeton, and he was baffled too. He said, well, maybe they're ice crystals. And I kind of had to laugh at that because I thought it was ludicrous. They were not ice crystals.
So these puzzling tracks are happening. Is this like a one day, or is it something where you just keep coming back the next day? Somebody calls you down and say they're back here? Or?
To the best of my memory, when I first picked them up, it was on the 10th of November 2004 when I detected the first group when I was on watch. And I tracked them from San Clemente Island all the way down off to the Baja Peninsula in the Pacific there. And they went away, and another watch or two, I was on watch, and the same formation appeared again. And over the course of 3-4 days, it probably counted up to that point, groups of 5 to 10 at a time. There were probably 50, 60 tracks by then. Maybe they were the same objects repeating the cycle, or maybe they were different objects, we don't know.
And when you saw these, it wasn't as if klaxons went off in there and red lights start flashing and everyone's running around.
Oh, as a matter of fact, the technicians, they actually shut down the radar. They were doing diagnostic tests on everything we had to make sure it was not a system malfunction. And it turned out that it wasn't. These were actually real objects. I had the highest spy track quality possible on these contacts the whole time.
So when you're looking at the tracks and you see like a group of 10 or whatever, are you able to isolate like one of them, find out more details on like one?
Potentially, yes, you can do that. In this case, however, they were all pretty much similar, identical. The only difference being is the spacing between them. If I could describe the scope, you're looking at your scope, you got north and then you got south. Looking at your scope, if you can imagine snowflakes slowly falling through the sky like that, that's kind of the way they appeared and tracked towards the south.
And then you also described some maneuverability that seemed to defy known aircraft.
Yeah, and so what happened was on the 14th, we were going to do the air defense exercise. And in the back of my mind, that's when I determined I was going to become concerned about these objects, is we were getting ready to launch a whole bunch of aircraft in that same piece of sky, because we like to play right around in those altitudes. And my concern, of course, was safety of flight. So when Captain Smith comes down to CIC, I said, "Sir, we've been tracking these for several days. I have no earthly idea what they are, and no one in combat knows what they are. And I highly recommend we send aircraft out there and intercept one and ID these things, because if we don't and we launch aircraft into this mess and there's a air-to-air mishap of some kind, somebody's going to ask us why we weren't more curious."
Why was that day in particular kind of a good day?
The 14th at, I believe it was 10 a.m., we were getting ready to do an air defense exercise, which is simulated combat training, very high fidelity, realistic type training. And we were going to have aggressor aircraft launch off the beach off Miramar and North Island Air Station and basically attack the strike group. And it's designed to be real high fidelity type of air defense training.
And so you talk to Captain Smith, and they decide to interrogate one of the things. What happens next?
Fast Eagle flight was Event 1 launching off the carrier, and he was up doing a functional check flight, getting ready to play in the 8X. And he was under control of the E-2 Hawkeye, the wallbanger. And so I talked to the wallbanger on the radio. I said, "Hey, basically, in layman's terms, you have contact on these contacts?" And they were like, "No, we see them on data link, but our radar's not holding good track on them." Seeing these contacts, Captain Smith orders me to intercept one of them. So I went back to the console. I picked the closest one that was to us, and I had intended to let the Hawkeye do the intercept because they already had control. It was just easier. But because they didn't have a good radar picture, I took control of the aircraft, and it turned out to be Commander Fravor's flight. He was actually the CO of the VFA 41, the Black Aces Squadron. And so we vectored him towards that position in the sky, and real quiet on the radio. I'm just giving him BRA calls, which is bearing range altitude. It's called BRA, to these unknown bogey group. It's pretty standard intercept, and until he gets to the merge plot position. Basically what the merge plot means on the radar, you got two objects in the same vertical piece of sky, so when I'm looking at the 2D display, it looks like a one radar blob now. The symbology merges together. As soon as he got to the merge plot position, the object that he was intercepting dropped from 28,000 feet down to 50 feet above the water in 0.78 seconds, as I found out later the next day.
And When you're in CIC and this is going down, are you hearing this radio talk back? And
we were all hearing it. I had in the overhead speaker, I had the air intercept control comms in the speaker, so we're all hearing Commander Fravor talk to the air intercept controller. Now, I was actually air intercept controller supervisor, so I was standing right behind the actual AIC, who has elected not to come out publicly for his own reasons, which I honor. And but I was helping him doing the radar interpretation, and I was helping him with the external comms, and I was helping him keep the front table in our CIC informed what was going on. And it was as soon and then he left his wingman up high in altitude. He was going to go down to the surface and take a look at this thing, because he was like, wow, what was that? And as soon as he did, this thing comes popping, and it did a barrel roll around him. And next thing I hear on the overhead comms was, oh my God, I'm engaged. Just pooping his pants. I'll never forget that. And this thing went back up to 28,000 feet and continued 100 knots going south, like nothing interesting at all. It just happened.
So I'll just wait till this guy goes by. I think what I missed. Okay, so in fighter pilot parlance, sure. What does that word mean? When you hear that someone's engaged, what does that mean?
It's kind of a misleading term, because it does not mean we're shooting at each other. It just means we're doing basically a dogfight with the opposer or the bogey. So he's in turns with the contact at this point.
And I know you guys were curious, so on that talkback, did you hear any descriptions over the talkback, or the only thing you heard is he's engaged with something?
Correct.
So he didn't describe it at that point?
Then, no. It was much later when he came out and told us what it looked like.
So describe how you guys later looked at that drop down from the sky at incredible speed. You went and looked at that again?
The next morning, of course, I don't even think I slept that night, because it was pretty eye-opening experience, to say the least. So I got the lead technician, who's also elected not to come out, and we have a system on board called cooperative engagement capability that has the ability to record everything. So basically we just played it back as if it was actually happening live again. And with the software and stuff, you can do analysis of the radar. And that's when I learned that it was actually less than a second. Went from 28,000 feet down to the surface of the ocean, and turns out 0.78 seconds.
And does that mean anything as far as speed? And
it was incredibly, it was unbelievable, because normally what would happen if a normal aircraft did that, first of all, it would fly apart. It wouldn't be able to withstand the G-forces, and there would be multiple sonic booms. It would be boom, 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 and this did not make any sonic booms.
There was a question about concern or fear in one of the controllers' voices, and tell me that story.
It was shocking. After we saw this object drop out of the sky like it did, and Spy tracked it perfectly all the way down to the surface. It had highest track quality possible during this whole time. It was quite shocking. On a combat team like we had, the government spends millions of dollars training us to do exactly what we were doing that day, to ID stuff. And there was a lot of experience in that room. The captain had 28 years, I had 18 years. My air controller had been, I think, in for 12 years at that point, and numerous deployments in wartime operations. And because no one knew what this was, it was pretty shocking. It was very humiliating, actually. I'm still mad about it. I want to make that ID.
and if you look over on the other side of combat, who's Gary Voorhees?
Gary Voorhees was a technician on board the ship, in charge of some of the ballistic missile software, and also in charge of the cooperative engagement system, capability system.
And do you recall him being there,
Oh, absolutely, yeah. I definitely remember
acting
Gary.
Like he's trying to fix something over by your console?
Excuse me, I remember Petty Officer Voorhees.
He said, oh, I need to check something over here.
Yeah.
He told me he did that a couple times.
Yeah, I think they made excuses to be up in combat checking all this out, because it was a big rumor. The whole ship was abuzz with this at this point.
give me a little play-by-play. It was before, I believe, the intercept, but you picked out a track and went upstairs, and describe why you went up there and what you did.
After this intercept tap, you know, I was never a UFO guy. You know, I was just a pretty normal person, I would have to say. And but in the back of my mind as an air controller, I always thought, you know what? If I ever get the opportunity to intercept a UFO, I'm going to try to do it.
Hey, you made it to the end. Here, take a seat. I'm doing this collecting and cutting work on my free time, and the reason why is I'm convinced of its importance. We are occupying this planet at this moment, and we are building our lives on nameless heroes' achievements, who died to protect what they believe in. We would still be ruled by kings, and there would be no freedom of spirit if it wasn't for them. 82 people in 2 days is not gonna change the world, and frankly, it's not enough. If you think the content was good, consider subscribing and telling your friends about UAP Library. I get excited every time someone appreciates my work, and that keeps me going. See you on the next video.